Okay, so just briefly, our session aims are going to be to explore opportunities that you can use when you get back to your own classrooms as a tool for teaching elements of the curriculum and using art as a starting point to that. So the idea will be that you can go away and you have ideas of how to use art as a starting point, how to use art as a creative stimulus, and also opportunities to cater for all abilities through the teaching. So I've done a lot of reading recently about all children being given the same starting point to their learning, and then the differentiation being more become by outcome. And one of the things that all children can access is looking at images and pictures. So that's one of the ways that you could start your lesson into a variety of teaching. So there's a quick little game. So on your table, there is a sheet of paper which has a, well, for this particular thing, but if you look at the back, if you just go on the back of one of these sheets of paper for now, and I would like one person to take a pen and draw a line across the middle of the piece of paper. It doesn't matter who. Okay, then the idea would be that just as a little, some of the activities are going to be involve working in teams. So if you could rotate the pen around, and each person has 20 seconds to add their own mark to the piece of paper, as it were. Okay, so it can be a scribble, a shape, a drawing. It can be absolutely anything that you think of, but you've got 20 seconds to contribute to the joint piece of art that you're going to create on your tables. So if we can start that. I haven't got a 20-second counter, so we'll just count 20 seconds in between. So the person who's got the pen now, 20 seconds, off you go. You need to be on the back of the piece of paper, because that's going to be another resource. If you go on the back of the piece of paper, yeah. Right, change the pen over if you haven't already done so. And change. And change over again if you haven't done so. And change round. You should end up with about 6 people in your team, I was expecting. Yeah, just everybody has a turn for 20 seconds to engage in it. Okay, so maybe the last person if you're in a slightly larger table. Okay, and if you could just stop that there. Okay, then ask yourselves in your team, have you created a piece of art? Then have a little 1-minute discussion about it. So do you think you have created a piece of artwork in what you've collaboratively put together? No? Okay. Do you think you've managed to create a piece of artwork on your table? Yes. Somewhat? Okay. How about yourselves?
I was just wondering if you'd stick that up in your classroom.
Would we? All open to interpretation, I suppose. Yeah. Well, oh, the little pattern going on here. And you've just joined us. So we've just, there are 6 groups. So for most of it, you'll be fine sitting where you are, but some of the resources you hand out at the end. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. It was just basically an icebreaker to get people talking and working together, but also opens a debate of kind of what is art. It's open to interpretation. Some people would say, yes, that is a piece of artwork. Some people may disagree with that. So your starting point to the children's learning could be any concept of art whatsoever. So there's a little thought for yourself as practitioners. So how creative are your lessons? And how many of your lessons do you think include an element of art teaching? And do you think it's possible that you could use art in every one of your lessons? So if you want to just spend 2 minutes on your table talking to the people that you're with around that subject of your own practice and what you think about that. To myself, when I was on one of the art teacher meetings back in the UK, and somebody said the older children get, the less creative they become, because the less we use art in our practice. If you think back to the teaching in the foundation stage, it's a lot more creative, and the children are developing skills through creativity. So if that is the case, why are we not using more art stimulus for the children to be more creative as they move through Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2? So this is just my interpretation. So I think it's a fantastic stimulus for work across all areas of the curriculum, enabling us to engage the children in cross-curricular teaching. So there's our little theory bit behind it. So if we start off, I was lucky enough to go to a presentation from this author, Anthony Brown, and I've brought along some of his books which I'll pass around for you to have a look at. But our first activity today is going to be, in your teams, you will see there's a large piece of green paper. Yep. And this would be used as a literacy activity. So it could be used anywhere across the school. If you're doing it in Key Stage 1, you might want to give them different materials. I've given you charcoal because it's quite a free and fluid material, and you can easily sketch and make changes. Now, this is not a test of how good you are at art or how skilled you are at art. They can be stick men, they can be whatever you want it to be. But the activity would be then, for the children, you're going to do it today, for the children to draw the route or the journey of what happens to this little boy as he goes through the forest. Okay, so if one of you could unravel your green sheet. And they're quite long, so that if you'll get more ideas, and as the person goes through the forest, more things might come to them, and they could then become the events in your story. So if you can maybe partly unroll it, and there should be charcoal on all of the tables. Oh, you'll be fine. You can get a tissue at the end.
How do you want us to start off?
So, back to this at the end. Depend on the language that you would use. So how is he helping him might be your kind of year 2, 3 question, or if you were moving up into year 5 in other ways. So you could start off. So with this particular story, it develops as he goes through, and the images that he uses are quite powerful to structure that. So it doesn't matter whether the child's in year 6 or in year 1, all of the children can access it. And then it'll be then your teaching skills in terms of what questions and what do you want the children to get out of it. But I'd hopefully like to say that if you give this activity to a group of children, regardless of how old they are, they would enjoy the collaboration, they would enjoy working together. And in some cases, we ask the children to go and write a story, but we don't give them enough stimulus to get them to start thinking about how's the story going to develop. So my next point as a teacher might be, make sure in your drawing you have 3 series of events. So what 3 things are going to happen to this boy as he journeys through the forest? And then you can move on from that and you could say, okay, can you write any adjectives that would go with that child at the 3 series of events? And then similarly, you could look at, okay, so how am I going to start those sentences? And then you can build on and put into the adverbs that go with it. But at this point, you would obviously tailor your teaching to the ability of the students. So you might have your children who are maybe ELL children or children with special educational needs. Your expectation would not be the same as the children who are gifted and talented, where you're saying you need to think of a certain type of word. We're looking for particular words and phrases to be used in your writing. But by working as a team, the children will bounce off each other and collaborate and put their ideas together. So depending on how you wanted to do this, you could have a mixed ability group of children working on this one activity, and they've all got their own targets. So something that I use to do that is like traffic light teaching. So I'll have red, the kind of some, most, all type of thing. So you will all have adjectives, and then the middle section might be putting their metaphors and similes into what's going to happen to him. And at the end, the green people could be putting some personification in. Onomatopia, he's crunching through the forest, and all those type of words can develop from this one activity. So if we leave that for there, even though I know I'd like to spend the full session doing the drawing, we're going to move on from that. On to, was there any questions about that actually before we do move on? Pertinent to this activity? No? Okay. Oops. Okay, so the next thing, which should be on your tables, I'm not sure if they actually photocopied or not, If not, it doesn't matter. There is a picture of a teapot. So in the pack, on one of the slides here is a picture of a teapot at the bottom. There's enough for, there's a maybe, ladies, have you got access to that? Can I just borrow a couple of those? Here you go.
Thank you.
There you go. So, if you just talk in your team about how you think this could be then used to develop, it might be your particular area of the curriculum, or it might be just any area of the curriculum that you think of. If you were to put this onto the board to your children, what do you think they would immediately think of? What questions? So if you want to make some jottings on the sheet of any questions that you think your children would come up with, or any questions that you would like to ask your children, with this being the stimulus to the beginning of your lesson, just have a couple of minutes to do that. What historical value do you think this photograph has? And again, thinking about your year group, and I'm kind of rushing through examples for you today, but you could spend a lot more time over the particular questions that you'd like to address and what happened. So what happened at the Battle of Trafalgar? What do you think happened at the Battle of Trafalgar based on this image? Okay, so again, I'm not expecting you to answer if you haven't got any, if you don't know about it already. You can maybe have a little bit of reading tonight. And then the final image here, as I said, I was working with the Baltic Arts Centre, and this is one of the artists, George Shaw, who exhibited this piece of work in the Turner Prize in 2011. And if you look at that, do you think it's a photograph, or is it a picture or a painting? Just looking at that image, do you think it's a photograph, or do you think it's a painting? Let's have a little. So it is actually a painting, to put you out of your misery, and part of his exhibit was going around looking at derelict areas, and he painted them, and this is what he saw from it. So in your packs on the table, I've written Activity 5 next to them, and it's basically just a kind of little takeaway for you of images and what questions, and again, what areas of the curriculum could you use these images in? So you can have a little look through that with your teams, as it were. So you've got kind of here, this could be like a historical one, or who is she, why have they decided to depict her in that particular way. So the ones for the maths are on here, so this would be that Anthony Gormley. So this is how many people, or how many pieces of metal has he used in one man. If he's used that many pieces of metal in one man, would he then use the same pieces of metal in the other? And you could become like a calculation to work out how many pieces of metal he's done to do this exhibition, or if he was to so if he was to multiply that by 10, sorry?
We ask him how many pieces?
I don't actually know the answer to it. It's just a kind of a starting point. But you could say to them, you could say like there's 150 pieces that's been used in it. Obviously, if the image was larger, you'd be able to kind of, and then you could go with estimation. You could estimate how many pieces have been involved. There's actually a really nice sculpture similar to this in the one of the hotels in the marina that I was in at the weekend, and it was like very similar in terms of very sculptural piece of work. So this is Paul Klee's work. So again, you could look at kind of rotation or symmetry or reflection linked to kind of shape and space areas. If you're looking for pictures and images specifically to do with maths, then obviously you can kind of tailor your search area to things that you would find appropriate, but you could still go along the same concept of giving the children this picture to start with. So I hope that it's just kind of given you some ideas as to how you can use art as a stimulus to kind of start off your lessons. Like, I'm sorry it's kind of been a bit of a whistle-stop tour in the 45 minutes, but I just thought to try and give you as many ideas as possible. Then you can kind of go away once you've got the idea, and if you're a specialist maths teacher, or you're a specialist English teacher, or geography, or whatever, you can then look for images that you think will work more specifically well with your subject, rather than we could sit and talk about one particular image for maybe 20, 30 minutes. This way you've got a good selection. Like the bottom ones here could be like science. images. So at the moment we've done, you do like plants in year 4. So this could be a stimulus to plants. So is this plant living or not? If not, why not? If it's not living, how come it's got leaves on it? And just again, as a way into you kind of your module that you would then develop the scientific inquiry from. So is that okay? You kind of get the general idea of where we're coming from with that. So on that note, obviously to say thank you for listening, and I hope it has been beneficial and some ideas you can take back to the classroom with you. Are there any questions that you have, like about the practice or about the ideas? Does anybody have any questions for me? Or no? Yep.
I noticed that you were using some famous portraits by famous artists.
Yeah.
Is it making the kids learn about these as well, or just using them as tools to introduce?
Well, it depends on where you want the learning to go. My suggestion for them today would be, I would, when I've shown them the picture, tell them a little bit about the artist and their background. But unless I was going on a focus to do that, it might be a biography. So if you were doing biographies, I would maybe focus on the artist a little bit more, and then you could look at other examples of their work. But if you're just wanting to look at the piece of work is like a hook into learning for English or for geography or for another subject area, then I probably wouldn't spend that much time on the artist, because that's not important to like the outcomes and what you're wanting the children to learn from it. The final thing, just to show you, is this was just a little quote that I found. Art makes children powerful. And if we could just reflect back on the kind of success of this session, do you feel now that your lessons could be more creative? You could use art in the real world. We're not going to go and find a picture for every single lesson of the day, but do you think that this has been useful for other areas of learning? It might be at the start of a module. So if you are teaching science, it might be that you could show them a picture at the beginning of the module to lead into that topic or that learning. And finally, this is the website. So the National Gallery in London does do work with schools, and they will suggest images that you can start with if you wanted to then do a project around a particular image. So the Fighting Temeraire was one that I actually got from this website. I've also done an area, a French module based on a painting called the Parapluie, and that is actually on here as well, and it's the lady standing with the umbrella, and it's obviously raining, so that could be into a topic all about weather. So there's loads of different permutations that you can put onto it. So I don't know if I actually saved that. I think the slide might be on there to see if you're writing it down. Take them away. So thank you very much again. If you've got any questions, please come over and ask. If not, please feel free to take the handout. So please don't take the books, because I borrowed them from our library and I've got to take them back.